if you're defining a destination as where you're happy, you will be perpetually
Yeah.
unhappy because you're not going to be in that destination ever. So it's learning how to fall in love with the process that allows for us to find a version of happiness more often. Obviously, the happiness is a complex idea, but the benefit of showing up.
Hey, it's Mike Myers from the Songwriting for Guitar podcast. Before we jump into this episode, if you're a songwriter, guitarist, and you're looking to advance your skills, gain confidence, and monetize your craft, be sure to check out songwritingforguitar.com for all our free resources. So let's jump into this week's episode. Dude, Seth,
Yeah.
I was on your podcast, so naturally I have to have you on my podcast to talk about things. And there's so many different angles that we could approach this, and I was thinking about it. But then I realized just when we had our introduction, you were like, hey, I moved to Nashville. I'm just starting this podcast. Also, I'm getting into music licensing, and I just built a studio, and I was like, whoa. So there's so many starts that you're just now getting into, which one start alone can be like, oh shit, like just overwhelming. But like several,
Right.
that's crazy. But you seem to be, I don't know, approaching this too with a level of curiosity and a level of, oh, no, I do not know. But that's what's fascinating. I don't know. Here we go. And I'm like, let's talk about that, because that is a particular type of person that's willing to put themselves not just once in one thing, but several things in the beginning of them.
Right. Yeah, I know the process for me is it's looking at every new step. I'm trying to, I guess, I'm trying to discover what it is that I'm not good at, and what can be better. So like there are certain things that I'm hitting a mark that I feel is technically acceptable, but it's not to the level that I want it to be. And so allowing myself to grow in places that there's no reason functionally that I should be good at until I really challenge myself and grow, and then also realize that other people
Mhm.
around me are really good at these things, and so I don't have fear in just saying I don't know and asking people
Yeah.
for help because they already know and I don't, so why not ask, right?
But here's where I would say what's interesting is it's almost like you've accepted, like, hey, there are people that really know a lot more about this, and I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna be with them. Wonderful. For some people, that takes years to get to that position, to just say, "Can you help me?" And what you see is a backlog of struggling, trying to piece together, and that's where they have this mismatch of, like, they've got half of step 37, but they have step 2, but then they have step 4, and they have and it's just not working, and they're frustrated. And it seems like you've already
Mhm.
come to the solution to prevent all of that. I'm just going to start saying, like, hey, can you help me?
Right. Yeah, I think that we attach certain skills that we to the value that we think that we bring
Mm-hmm.
to the world. So there are, if you are great at public speaking, well, you have a lot of pride in that. So you kind of almost protect yourself from trying to learn because that's where I carry
Yeah.
value. So if I look weak in that, I'm not going to be able to do it. And so for me growing up, playing piano was the thing that I was really, I had excelled at, according to the community that I was around. And so it became scary to me when I was like, I need to
Mm-hmm.
do music. Okay, I need to record it. And so in my head, music is just music. So if you are recording it, I'm attaching like I'm supposed to be good at recording because I know how to play piano. Well, that's
That's
not.
not accurate.
There's no reason that's not true at all,
Huh.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's just like if you're good at playing in a recording studio, you might not be great live, or vice versa, or whatever the things are. So I've gone through this process of trying to break down, and dissociate each part of the skill, into something that
Mm.
I can then go
Yeah.
grow and be okay to not be good at it. Like I don't need to be good at it. I need to grow in it. I want to get better than I am right now.
Have you always kept this like, you've just immediately stepped into the realm of just like, yeah, this is how you're going to get better? is this just transformation over time? You've come to this it feels like a very cathartic moment where, for again, not that I'm saying that everyone does this, but a good chunk of people have this resistance against asking and helping and just trying to piece a system which essentially doesn't work, and that's where they drop off.
I Yeah, I feel like it's often it's a fear of
Yeah.
failure, right? Like, and so why are you afraid to fail? If you're starting up a new skill that you literally have no experience with, there's no reason you're going to be good at it. I mean, maybe if you just happen to be lucky and you can just, speak a new language, for example, like you're not going to know. So you start. You just have to start. And so disconnecting even pieces
Mhm.
of that, I think, are a big example. I'm not a big sports person, so I apologize about the analogy.
I'm
But if
not.
you're a
If
pitcher
I've
and you're
never.
really good, yeah, no, no, no. But if you're a good pitcher, you're still probably not going to be great at being the
Yeah.
catcher, right? So or whatever.
This-
So like you need to be able to like dissociate where your pride is at and say, okay, I have an opportunity to grow here. And me being good at it doesn't make me feel any better, especially when I know that I'm just lying to myself about it. So
but it's amazing
yeah.
that sometimes we love to live in that lie for a little bit because we're just like, oh no, 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 no. It's like, no, you're
Hmm.
not good at it, because why would you be good at it? This is a brand new thing that you're just picking up. Oh,
Yep.
what, how does that make sense that you would be amazing at it? Oh, it's because you think the skill that you've built, like, yeah, you're pretty decent at playing your open mic, or you've been great at writing some of these songs, but now you need to write this type of song. Why do you think that carries over in this?
Yep.
It doesn't. You're starting at the ground floor like everyone
Right.
else. Like,
Right.
and maybe that's the scary bit, is because, oh, it's the ground floor again. You're saying, like, I'm going to have to put in this work and I may have to, like, not do well and I'll have to write a whole bunch. And that means, because we're in love with the result, which, people think, oh, it'll get me, sometimes higher status, more money, but we're not in love with the process of the whole thing, which you got to love the process.
Right. And obviously there's that all, we're always learning something new. I learned that this was a problem for me when I, well, did, some therapy work and trying to understand why I was struggling with
Mm-hmm.
music, and was I afraid of winning at
Yeah.
music, or what was what was the issue? And I realized that I owned a recording studio with a friend when I was younger, and was not good at it, but did my
Yeah.
did my best or whatever. And then I accidentally built a film company, which felt effortless, quote unquote, because I wasn't supposed to be good at film. So it was easy for me to kind of grow those skills and just
Yeah.
keep failing, and over time I got competent at holding a camera and hitting the red button. But as I started re-engaging into the music side, which has this fear baked into my brain from childhood, it was like, okay, yeah, disconnect the pieces of the puzzle that I'm not good at. So if I'm afraid at X, Y, or Z, just, yeah, take it one piece at a time. And I have a tendency also to hyper focus on one thing at a time. And so I don't try to become good at mixing at the same time as writing lyrics, at the same time as you know, practicing my paradiddles and my drums. I'm kidding, but I
Yeah.
mean, but truly, like I want one technique at a time to try to quote unquote conquer enough that I feel like I took a step
Be-
forward that I can carry into
because
the
each
next
step
thing.
needs that focus. You can't do
Yeah.
you can't get better at multiple skills at the same time, because, like, one is going to not get good. Like, one will get better, the other one kind of gets better, and the other one doesn't. But also, too, from an energy level, it's not sustainable. That's one thing where you'll totally burn yourself out and you'll go like, oh, I hate music,
Yep.
it's so exhausting, it's so rough. Well, yeah, if you try to do everything at once, it is pretty exhausting. um
I think what you mentioned, during the interview we did last time, the idea that you spend 15 minutes a day on one part of the skill at a time is how
Yeah.
you grow, not just play for 15 minutes. It's like work on something for 15 minutes and then play, then have fun,
And
you
I
know?
think that's the thing
So,
too, that the book that I remember when I mentioned, you were like, "Oh yeah, I read that Crit." I'm like, "Oh yeah, she really dives in to being okay with not being great at the thing, at actually struggling at the beginning, and actually being judged as like, oh, you're probably not going to do well with it." But in turn, that person keeps on trying and progressing and learning from others, applying, and it gets better, and maybe just it has some form, but man, it develops more and more and more and more, as opposed to those that are gifted, where they excel, but then they plateau because they have no framework for getting better. And so they kind of look around, they go like, I'm good at, they're looking for validation, they're looking for people to be like, hey, I'm still good at the thing, and they're like, yeah, it's been a couple of years, you're kind of the same. I guess you're okay.
yeah. I remember that when I was filmmaking, I shared a video with somebody and they were like, that's amazing. That's great. And then I shared another one with the same tricks and they were like, okay, yeah, you can still do that thing you did. That's great. Like, what's next? And I was like, okay, cool. This is where I'm looking for a dopamine hit for validation instead of actual growth. And that hit me. And I was like, okay, just keep growing and getting better. Take one step at a time. And yeah.
And it's nice to get the validation, but what I find is the people that do
Oh,
well
yeah.
over time, they're like, okay, cool, thank you. Like they still enjoyed, like, cool, I'm glad you appreciate it. But they're also like, so what would you do differently? Like they're much more interested in understanding the nuances of how they can get better. And I mean, with podcasting and with licensing and recording, there's so many different nuances and so many different techniques that you can learn from people that are doing it well, that you can filter in, but you won't filter them in unless you ask
Right.
and be okay with them giving an answer. Because sometimes we say, "Oh
Right.
yeah, I'm totally
I
fine with
also,
it," but then people give the answer, and then we're like,
yeah.
like we're just, it's just like,
Shoot.
I
Yeah.
didn't like that answer.
That's awesome. I also have struggled with overthinking a lot. Struggles maybe the wrong word. I am an overthinker. I'm an overanalyzer. I think about everything. I plan
Mm-hmm.
like crazy, and so a lot of the deep dives that I do, it's that whole paralysis by analysis thing, right? Where I mean, my podcast launched a solid 8 months after I started
Mm-hmm.
it, because I was like, okay, well, how do I edit, how do I post, what's the intro need to be, what are all like all the pieces, and everybody's like, just start, and I'm like, I know, but I have too much to figure out, so that once I launch, I'm at least comfortable with that. But I think this is important for me, is I have to know that I've launched it to the best of my ability within reason, with totally tolerating the imperfections. So the things that I know I could make better technically, I need to be okay with to a degree. So like I want to hit a bar and I want to go
Mm-hmm.
above that bar, but I also need to know that I can just let it go. Like it has little glitches here, the color's not matching, the things I know from the filmmaking standpoint, like it doesn't matter.
It doesn't,
You know?
because I was like, we could sum up what you just said right there into this sentence. Hey, I just launched a podcast and I'm into the first 10 episodes. Basically, so because if somebody gets that, they're like,
Yep.
oh, okay, you're just starting out. If you had said, I'm in episode 200 of my podcast, cool, then the it's almost like the measurement too of how we, like, other people would look into it and suggest, is gonna be different. So why don't we adopt that too? But we don't, because you said it's like analysis by paralysis by analysis. I think there's many songwriters, and I've met many songwriters that are basically crippled by overstudying and writing down. They've taken this course, they've taken this course, they've taken this course, they've taken this course. But the problem is they've never applied a single element of what they've learned into writing a song. And it breaks my brain.
Yeah.
It just, like, it shuts down, because I'm like, how do you think you're going to, like, flipping through your notebook and writing more notes and going back through that is not going to help. What's going to help is writing 200 songs based off of what you've learned. And it seems like you're now in the space where it's a little bit less and, kind of like analysis, but it's like, cool, I need to do it, because when you start doing it, you're committing yourself to continually doing it. And maybe that's where people don't want to jump in, because then suddenly it's now a commitment.
I also think if you have a goal or a dream that a skill you're wanting to acquire, and you so badly want to win at that, and you're just starting
Yeah.
off, and so you release your first song to somebody, and they're like, "That's really great." Well, you start to like pile on this fear of failure
Mm-hmm.
again. I think, like, as you start to get affirmation consistently, you're more afraid of getting the things that break down that reality, because you know how you're more aware of how good you are not, the better that you get at something
Yeah. Yeah.
too. So I feel like there's a breakdown that happens as you start to get more affirmation for stuff, you know?
It's what's fascinating about that is sometimes we're also aware of who we're bringing the thing to and the answer they're going to give. Like, we're giving it to a person that we just know, like, yeah, my mom's just gonna be like, "Yeah, it was great," and I'll be like, "Oh, that's all I needed to hear." Yeah.
Yay.
But if you go to a mentor, they're gonna be like, "Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's not bad. Here's what I would do next time. But I really like how this is happening here." They're gonna
Yeah.
give you the thing to work on.
Man, I
Yeah.
hunger.
Oof.
Oh, I have hunger for those people in my life that say this is what I would
Mm-hmm.
make better. I like, even the people I know that they like it. They know that they don't even need to say that with me. They're like, that's fine. Cool. That's great. Here are the things that sucked. Like, it's like refreshing as heck to me for some reason. Just like, cool. I can start to apply that
Because
later
that's the
or fix this
keys
one.
to, like, the next thing. And I think what people,
Yeah.
either you're hungry for the praise or you're hungry for the development. And that's kind of like it. And it's just
Right.
like, if you're hungry for the praise, that's why people, go to the same open mic for 20 years, where everybody plays the same style song again and again and again, and nothing's changed. And it's all just a clap of like, that
Yep.
was great. There's a point where that's good for us at the start, because it needs to get us, just kind of motivated to get going. But eventually that does nothing for us in the long term. Um, I was telling
Right.
you that yesterday, the book club that I'm in, it's a book called 10x is
Yeah.
easier than 2x. And somebody expressed, man, this is really tough. And he goes, uncertainty is the price of admission for the next level. And I was like, oh man, that's
Hmm.
that's some good shit. I was like, there we go.
I love that.
Uncertainty is
That's
the price
awesome.
of admission. And it seems like when you're okay with that, you're okay with, like, tell me all these things that need to change. I'm curious, because you say, piano was the intro. That was the thing for music. And you started a recording, studio, but, it didn't work. I tried my best with the knowledge you had. When did you come to that position of like, cool, not only, and I feel this is really important for people that haven't been to your studio, which is, not everyone has. Not only have you made the verbal commitment, but when I walked in your studio, I was like, oh, damn. Okay. You're committed to it. Like, it was just like things were set up, equipped. And I was like, ooh, that's nice. I was like, okay, yeah. You know what? I've been thinking about a loudness meter. I don't have a loudness meter. Like, I was looking around. You've not just talked the talk, but you've invested wisely in kind of like your setups and your things. And you were telling me about, like, the people that you've
Yeah.
had over, your mentors, to like advise you on the next step. Oh, I'm getting some mixing help on this. So it seems like it's not just talk. How did it get there?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, for me, the space in particular, because I had a
Yeah.
studio before, I wanted this one to be so capable that I know I'm the problem all the time.
Mm.
So so if if the studio is great and there's I don't have excuses
Yeah.
for gear and for mics and for whatever for the sound quality to not be good. I know for sure that granted, sorry, I should finish that thought really quick. I know for sure that I'm the problem, but uh, I, what was I going to say? Sorry. Um, Edit point. Don't you
It's
love
just like
it? Sorry.
edit point.
um, Edit point. Um,
Oh, it's okay.
shit, I
So
lost it.
I
Sorry.
I
Yeah, yeah.
what's fascinating to me with this studio that you built, it's gorgeous. It has, everything is like ready to go. Like if you had people, you could be here, 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 it's set to go, set to go, set to go. To me, how did you get to that jump of uncertainty, built-in fears about music commitment, and then suddenly now being the point where it's like, cool, I'm fully committed? How did you get from that chasm, that jump from uncertainty, and like it wasn't a thing for quite a while? And I feel for people that eventually jump
Right.
back into music, that's the story. There was this period of like, oh, music didn't happen, it was a completely other thing, and I did this and I was pretty good, but like, mm, yeah, now I'm
Yeah.
here because I want to be. How'd that happen?
I think from my end, there was definitely a massive driver of frustration coming from feeling like that
Mm-hmm.
filmmaking stuff that I had done and still do, and I love it, but the the filmmaking side had taken what I had originally started as a recording studio, and a lot candidly because it was easier to make money in film than it was running a recording studio, at least
Mm-hmm.
in the town that I was at, and with the skills that I had, right? And so I kind of fell into that and was like, man, I still need and want to do music. I'm constantly sitting down and writing, and I need to get stuff out, but I also have this fear of the judgment that I have for myself that I'm perceiving from other people that is not
What's the
helpful
judgment, or
either.
what did you
But
perceive in
I
your head when you thought about that? Like,
Oh, that I release something and
okay,
it's lame. Like the very childhood versions of bullies making
okay,
fun of you and me making fun of me, or I mean, really some simple quote unquote stuff like I know I want to record something and I try really, really hard and I've got my speakers set up in a room that's not treated and I don't have any correction going on. And so the mix just always sounds bad. And I didn't know anything about gain staging, not that you need to. I mean, I'm not trying to pitch anything about that side of it, but I didn't know what I was doing wrong, and I was trying my best and I kept hitting fail points. I was like, man, this is so annoying. And I yeah, it's been a push. I mean, I've spent really 2 years in this space learning and growing one step at a time that turned into the studio that you saw, that is now capable for executing, music well. I'm not saying I am, but I'm
I think
getting
you're
there.
getting there, man, because I heard some of the stuff and I'm just
No,
like, there's
thank
certain
you.
things that I was like, oh,
Yeah,
I could
yeah,
hear
yeah,
this is where I would change. But what's even more
yeah.
fascinating is you have to let go of something. So you were taking something that was working well and you allowed it to stop. And like, you moved from your and that, to do a move, I know, is like, it's difficult to make a state jump to a whole new place, a whole new thing. And I think it's funny that we both like arrived around the same time, but knowing like, oh, I
Yeah.
have to do this. Knowing and doing are like, two different things.
Oh yeah. Well, and my wife and my family are also courageous and open, so that was
It
helpful too.
it
I'll
is.
say, I mean, it takes a lot of buy-in for us to all say, yeah, let's go reinvent life for a second in a different way. You know, um, I, I, yeah, it's exciting though. I mean, it's easy to look back. I don't want to point negatively to other people, but if you look back and you're like, man, the last 5 years I've been doing this thing and I feel
Yeah.
stuck, like who put me in this position? Like I did. So I'm the one that needs to pull
Yeah.
myself out of it. No one else is going to do it. Like, and the position wasn't bad, it just wasn't what I wanted things to be
I
for me.
think that's the important thing right there Because when we think of awful things, we think of just like, oh, this is a terrible, like the walls are caving in and it's awful. I've lost my thing. But what you're describing is, oh, it was a thing that was going well, but it just didn't make me happy. And
Yeah.
I think everybody has that in a sense. There are points where there's things that we feel that we have to do, that we love to do, but we don't because we've been doing this other thing for a while, and it's very safe, and it's kind of what we know. Even if I don't love it at
Mhm.
this point, I understand the ins and outs of it. I know when things go wrong, what needs to be fixed, and but at some point you kind of have to make the decision. Are you okay with that? Like, if this is the end all be all, like, is this what you want?
Right. Yeah, and I think that there's also an important thing to communicate. I mean, in my opinion, to people that like sometimes you have to do those things you don't want to do, and there's nothing ethically wrong with obviously working a job and
No.
paying the bills and doing the things. So it's a matter of engaging with something on the side that you can grow. Like for example, my podcast is new. Like there's no way that's going to be even close to paying bills, for maybe
Yeah.
ever or for like like that's not the point. But it's on the side. It's something that from a mechanic standpoint, there's reasons and good purpose for it. But the sharing good ideas with the world and being there. But yeah, I just think it's important to um
There's different steps along the way. What you're describing is
yeah,
there's different steps when you're
thank
starting
you.
out. Yeah, it's not going to be a full-time thing. It's not going to be, it's like you're going to be doing this while developing this. You're going to be, I feel like there's many different transition points where you can slowly let go of this thing and then you can upgrade to the next level. But there's a period of time where these two have to kind of share a dance with each other, and you're not able to
Yeah.
do it fully, but there is some time you're able to carve out and develop it and get better at it and learn from others and apply that knowledge. And then if you do that for a
Yeah.
while, it's almost like you can cut back the other thing that you're not crazy about, but it's like you realize right now that's where it is, but it's not how it's going to be forever.
Right.
Is
Yep.
That's a long-term vision plan. It
Yeah.
And I think
Vision
it
plan. That's
has
good.
to
I
be.
like
It
that.
has You have to see almost like an overarching, this is what it's going to look like long term. In the short term, it may be like this. And so it doesn't bother if others don't see it or if they don't get it. And it's not my job
Yeah.
to make them see it. What it is my job is to make sure that I'm putting in the work, the effort, the things that I know that move the needle in the direction that I want. And if everybody chooses to look at me, that's their wasted time. And if I'm their thought,
Yeah.
it just seems like that you're very just kind of like, all right, let's get on this path. Like, it seems like a very long-term thing, which I can relate to because I'm short-term moves. I'm like, okay, that's cool, but what does this mean in the bigger
Mhm.
picture of things? Like 5 years from now, what is this going to look
Yeah.
like? Like, where is it going to? Yeah,
I have
yeah.
a
Okay,
question for
go.
you. Yeah, I have a question for
Yeah.
you too, but I guess I want to start with a little
Mhm.
quick story. When I had the film company with a team of people um, that were asking me what the vision of the
Mhm.
company was, they would reference Elon Musk, and he's like, "Well, Elon Musk just wants to make people, the world or the human race
Yeah.
multiplanetary. Like, okay, so every decision that he makes, it seems like he's running all of these different companies for all kinds of things, but like he has an ultimate goal that is his vision. My ultimate goal that's guiding me on all of these little decisions is that I want to create music that people will be able to enjoy and that can be useful for movies and commercial stuff and just enjoy it on Spotify. That's my ultimate vision. So every decision I'm making is leading up towards that, sharing good ideas
Mhm.
in the music side, right? Um, you, from the outside, it could appear that, I mean, obviously you have a consistent name, but that you have a lot of like too many directions. I don't think you have too many directions, but clearly you have a vision of what you're trying to do. And What is that?
Well, here's what, before I answer, this is what's great when allow me to dodge that question and then go deeper into your question. When you like that, to me shows the scope of how you can, people can build things with sometimes like, oh wow, it built, because what you're describing is you had staff too in film, which is crazy. Like,
Yep.
so it was doing well.
Yeah. I think when we were at our most on staff, we had 14 people full time. That we were in Denver and in Grand Junction, and we were going all over the country filming.
That's amazing.
But I woke up and realized, was like, that's not what I am happy with. And I mean, small business is hard, and so the stress that comes along with like having payroll and all of those things that come and go really quickly. It broke me down, man. I was like, I am burnt out, just absolutely burnt out, and for something that wasn't my ultimate dream or goal. And that's the thing I was saying, is like I woke up and realized, like, I'm the one that got me here, so like I have to get out
What's
of it.
great about that, I don't know if you ever had this perspective when you came to that realization. This film, it was a love that you discovered, but it's also sounded like something that developed and built. It feels like sometimes too like accident. Like it was just like, oh, okay, let's get this. And what's crazy is if you could scale that, imagine a thing that you're insanely passionate and excited about. That's what I'm like, accidental growth and scaling. Unintentional, like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, oh yeah, man, imagine like the focus of like taking that energy that you did. That fights, to me, any sort of like, oh, I'm not sure, any sort of hesitancy, because it's like, hey, if you unintentionally scaled and built this thing that's amazing, imagine with an intention and passion and development and skill, like what it can be. That boggles my mind.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm really, 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 truly excited. It just took me breaking down the reasons that I didn't do that first, outside of the confusion of how to make money and pay the bills. Like it was like there was something else, and like that we talked about that earlier, but it was the fear. It was the fear of failure, and the fact that my identity from the time I was 2 was a piano player. Like that is, people pointed to me and said, look, he's good at playing piano. Here, monkey, go play the piano so that everybody claps their hands at the end because you're a little kid. And then I get older, and it was the same version. And it's been my whole life. My identity is attached to it. I was like, man, I am not going to be successful at producing songs or recording songs if I keep being afraid of the judgment, because I'm not as good at those things as I am or was at the skills of playing piano. From we're talking about like childhood trauma stuff here.
Well, it's interesting to me. Again, that was the thing. That was the music. It was an identity given, and with that, you played. People clapped. It was awesome. And then there, you get into the intricate, like, I'm going to build a studio. I'm going to build a career, and it's just like it's not easy to clap, because there's so many nuances that people don't understand. You can try to explain, but then they don't get. And then you start to actually see, oh, this is actually how it works. Oh, I had some preconceived notions of how music happened. Oh, I need to understand. No, I don't understand publishing. No, I don't understand. Oh, I do understand song structure, but I don't know how to make this always get. Oh, all these little facets you're discovering. And it's hard to describe it to someone, because sometimes if you do describe it, they're kind of like, sounds like a lot of work. And you're like,
and it is. Yeah. Yep. I mean, and that's where the benefit comes, though. It's like anytime you work hard at something, you're growing that long-term dopamine that you get from it. You go conquer a hard skill, and like that's the good dopamine. That like swiping on social media is the cheap, fast, more, potent at the moment, but it just goes away and dumps, right? Like, but the hard work stuff is like, I always feel so much better. Obviously, everyone does. Like after you work hard at something, especially something that you've had as a goal, or you realize you need.
I just want to appreciate that you said dumps, and I just imagine Instagram just taking a big old dump in our soul, just crushing it, and it's just staying there every single time. But I will not avoid the question you asked me. What's my vision? And it's true. People can look at all these little facets of like, well, Mike does a podcast and he has a company and he does some licensing. And I always see them as two separate entities because to me, there's the education side, which is purely just educating songwriters that are in different positions in life that desire to move forward at a higher level. And so that means also connecting them with people that I've been lucky to be mentored by and collaborate with that are doing it at a level that's sustainable and it's a career and it's the thing they do to pay bills. And that's to me exciting because they don't know their names. And that demystifies that you have to know them. They've done some cool shit. It's awesome. It's great, but you can still do it. And so creating that community, that to me is the exciting thing with songwriting for guitar. On the other side, I just love writing and composing and creating and getting into more and more television shows because at first it was, oh, this is interesting. Then it became very intentional. And now it's grown to a level of like, wow, it's crazy. 5 years ago, I wouldn't feel confident with this. Now it's just like, I'm like, cool, I'll do that. So it's looking for that next, as what we're talking about right now, higher levels where it's like, God, I want a 6-figure like placement. That'd be great. That sounds
Yeah.
great. That's a high level. That's so high. But it's like, cool, you've done the quick $100. You've done the 4-figure. You've done the 5-figure. You have not had that level. And that might take 3 years, 4 years. Cool. That's fine. But man, when it happens, not so much about the money is the bonus, but the other thing is like, it's probably going to be with a collaborator, which is going to be exciting because it's also someone I get to share it with, but it's also just, again, myth busting that you need to do this, this, and this in music. So those are the things that power me to carry out the vision of both sides, but then also meeting people that are also hungry to do that. And then my network and my community grows of my circle grows of people that are very insanely driven, passionate. They look after others, but they're constantly bettering themselves, and they can tell me 5 books that you need to read. And, oh, here's a nugget of like things that I can write down. I'm like, oh, wow, I need to do that. It's inspiring. I don't consider it overwhelming, but it's like, oh, they're really going, I got to step up my game a little bit because it's just like they push you in a good way to be a better and a higher level.
Yeah. No, and I think that community drive that you've put together, it feels like it feeds the same ultimate goal regardless. And obviously you're doing all of the things you're doing, but like having a podcast, having courses, having a book, it all still feeds, like you say, directly into the goal of having a songwriting, like being able to do songwriting, engage the music industry and help other people. Like that's like what else should life be?
What exactly? What should it be? If you've been able to get to a level where it's now sustainable and you find it shocking and you think, man, if I could go back to 5 years ago, Mike, or 6 years ago, Mike, what I would probably tell myself this, and this. And so, oh, that sounds like you're creating like a program or basically a curriculum. You should probably create something that informs people on this, and this. It's not a fast track, but it's almost like you're giving them the blueprint that you used to help get to where you are. And if they use that blueprint, adjust it to them, put in the work, it will work out. That's the fun thing.
That's awesome.
And that's what I find interesting with where you're at, like you embracing just the blueprint and embracing like the foundational elements and staying there, being willing to and talk about that. Because I feel like when people talk about what they're working on, they try to make it fluffy or try to make it more, kind of like, well, I'm working on, and they try to add a level of mystique or just like pomp and circumstance.
Right.
Where you're just like, yeah, I'm working on this thing because, man, I listened to it and it was just like, it was not what I wanted at all. And I'm like, wow, the transparency in that phrase is awesome because you truly are allowing yourself to stay there, but be okay with it instead of trying to hide under this language or these nuances or make excuses. Like, and I feel like that's the
Hmm.
other half I get. Oh, it was a crazy week. Yeah, I still have crazy weeks. Crazy weeks are not going to disappear. Crazy
Right.
weeks are going to be
No.
consistent. So if you're using
Always.
that as the quick getaway car in everything that you're doing at the beginning, I don't think you're going to make it, because you're always going to cling to
Right.
that.
Yep. Yeah. No, I'm unrelenting on each skill that I find important that I need to learn, and I'll spend an unnecessary amount of time. Well, not unnecessary. I spend the
Yeah.
necessary amount of time to figure out what it is that I haven't figured out, and I get frustrated if I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand it. Like we were talking about the music industry stuff. I was like, why in the world is this so complex, and why do I feel like I'm an idiot because it doesn't make sense to me? and and the idea of just sign up for this account and call it good, I'm like, that doesn't, I mean, okay, that works, I'm sure, but I want to understand. So
You're
I'm
doing
like,
the exact balance
yeah.
of what it needs to be. It requires, yes, as you're growing, gear to do the thing you do. But the one thing you're not doing is just, I feel this is the terrible thing about gear. You can buy a new thing and feel like you've reached a new level, and it can look great on
Mm,
Instagram posts. It can look great on Facebook posts. And it's like, well, can I hear what you're doing? Oh, you want to hear it? Well, yeah, you have that new XYZ. Can I hear what you're working on? Oh, well, things have been crazy. So I just have this piece of
right.
gear that's like
Yeah.
2000. Just say, I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
You're,
And I mean, to be fair, that's been me like for 2 years, like, right. And that's awesome. I'm okay with that. Like it's been me for 2 years sitting in the studio, not having stuff out on Spotify still to this day, but I will in,
what I
give
will
me a
say
month.
is
Okay.
what you're
But
doing differently is
yeah.
you've been developing it and getting feedback. That's the other thing. Sometimes people will sit in that
Yeah.
space of just the gear and not doing the thing and not getting the feedback because they're just like, I know it's not going to be
Yeah.
good. And I've been really clinging to this Kemper. I've been clinging to this
Yeah.
hardware compressor
Yeah.
that, like, I see everybody, and I got all the Fab Filter gear, and I bought all, and I got isotope, and it's like, cool,
Hmm.
those are all great companies, um, but
Yep.
those companies are absolutely pointless if you haven't written a couple, 100 or so songs to, like, just get the gears moving and getting the feedback on what needs changed
Yep.
and just starting to implement those
Yep.
tools to discover, like, oh geez, that's a terrible sound. Cool, now you know. Don't use it. Use another one.
Right.
Trust your
Right.
ears. Start to learn. Well, why don't you? And to me, that's the other question that's always interesting. Well, why isn't it good? Well, it's really fuzzy.
Hmm.
Okay, so make it less. Oh, or what you said, gain staging, or it's like, oh, it's just
Hmm.
really. For me, this was a problem when recording guitars. Like, man, it sounds so thin. Well, how many guitars do you have? One. That's why. Is one. It can only do one thing. So if you
Yeah.
take the highs out of it, it'll just be nothing but lows. But I need some highs in it. Okay, well, but I want the low. Well, then you're going to have to track multiple guitars. So that means you're going to have to get good at tracking. You're going to have to get good at knowing different parts to play to layer on top of each other, so they're all not phasing each other. It's a whole, and then it's like, oh, then there's more to this. And you're just in that space where
Right.
you are totally embracing that, where others are quietly sitting on the
Yeah.
sidelines waiting.
I think I also want to acknowledge that I'm breaking every rule that I tell to other people when it comes to film. So when they say, what do I need to buy? Like, what camera do I need and what lens do I need and all this stuff? I'm like, you don't need that. Like, your phone is going to crush it for
Yeah.
you. Like, truly, I use the phone all the time. I mean, I've got,
Yeah.
nice cameras sitting around the studio, and I do my intros on the phone because it's easier and it's more convenient. And, and um, and because it's valuable, it is valid. So it's like the stuff I have in the studio, I guess that's the difference, is that I'm aware that that piece of gear isn't going to make me better. It's something that I want to add to my tools set to
Hmm.
understand how to use, but I don't think that that's going to make a song better.
I think that's
you know,
huge. And yeah,
so
you can admit that.
yeah.
People ask me, like, should I get a Helix, a Kemper? Which amp profiler should I get? And I'm like, well, what do you have? Logic. Start with Logic right there, because the concepts are the same. just use Logic. Just use the
Yep.
built-in.
I'm not going to call the guy out, but I talked with the guy who was all about, having the tubes and the real everything, and you can only use these amazing pedals. And I had in the past created this guitar sound
Yeah.
on that Mustang that you saw, and and Logic. And he was like, "How in the world did you get this tone?" And I was like, "You do not want to know." I was like, in the box, no
Yep.
plugins, Logic. It just sounded great. Like,
It's exactly
so
that, because
yeah,
it's about the player, the concept, the how the song is formed, the part that you're. It's a whole host of other things that are totally not at all a piece of gear. But I think it's the one thing that we can hold and
yep.
buy and be like, oh, I got the one because I saw the YouTube video and they used the Fab Filter EQ, and I'm going to throw that onto my vocal, even though the melody itself really isn't that good. But I am, however, it's like I'll get to it's Instagrammable. Mixing a vocal right now. There we go. I'm going to post it.
Mm,
Does nothing. And yeah.
yeah. And that's something I've been asked. I mean, I'm curious about for my own self, and would love to have know your opinion on too. But I'll start it off with a statement. With the podcast stuff, I started cutting the shorts out of the long form stuff, and realized that I was ending up. I mean, I had some
Mm-hmm.
great content that I'm excited to share. That but I had other clips that I was like, yeah, that's fine. It's a post. And is it, but am I posting to post, or am I posting to make the world a better place with better thought? And like, so, I need to apply the same question to my music stuff once I start attaching that to songs. And behind the scenes stuff is interesting to people, so that can be valuable. But like, I don't want to clutter my feed full of, it's fine. I did it because I'm supposed to, social
Mm-hmm.
media ing. It's a new verb, right? Like, but but instead, like, how do you make sure that what you're sharing isn't just spamming for no good reason, and giving people
This is where I
something
say
valuable?
that's you don't have to really worry about that, because it's not spam. It's you sharing your point of view and actually building your audience and
Mm.
building your message. And you're also attracting the people that are like,
Yeah.
hey, this is, I love that he shared this. Like, I love that he showed what was happening behind the scenes, because it's just engaging to them, and it's part, and it's speaking to them. Like, for
Yeah.
instance, it's a maybe this is a silly analogy. I follow Batman on Instagram. I'm sure Batman's not going to post all the things that I'm crazy about, but a good chunk of what Batman posts is pretty quality content where I'm like, man, I love that episode of the animated series. That's so cool. Oh, they posted that. That was really cool. I'm not going to unfollow, because I
Awesome.
think we're at a place where if it's not engaging, guess what we can do? Swipe up. No, we
Unfollow.
can just
Yeah.
swipe up,
Yeah.
because
That's true.
there's
Yeah.
40 million. I
Well,
like
I
how
know. Yeah.
you
Yeah. Yeah.
went to like
Yeah.
the detrimental there, that it's so bad there. He shared deeper. I'm going to unfollow where, and now it's just
Oh,
like, no, they can just swipe up because there's a boatload of other things below. And so that's, yeah.
I guess, yeah, what I what I meant by unfollow really on that is that, like, I don't follow the accounts I don't want to
Exactly. If they
follow. So it's
followed,
like I'm not forcing myself into somebody
you
else's feed.
aren't,
You
they
know,
willfully click
like,
that.
yeah,
So it's just like,
yeah,
you can come on
exactly.
in. It's all good. And you're going to see what you get. And if you don't like it, okay, then it doesn't get a lot of likes. That's okay. A lot of the things that I
Right.
thought were like dumb, and I'm like, oh no, that's pretty stupid, ends up doing well. And there are some times where I'm like, no one's gonna like that, and I'm like, I was right. No one liked that. No one really cared about that. But that's the beauty of doing more and more, because you discover that. It's like songwriting. How do you know what constitutes a really catchy chorus? Well, you have to get feedback and start to discover these elements. And you have to do that a lot, because then you'll discover how to consistently write things that have hooks, that develop. And that's what I think is exciting about that space that you're in right now, because that's the period of developing and learning all these things that will be beneficial, like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 that are just built upon and developed too. It's like there is another stage, but it's
Yeah.
just like it's the thing grows a little bit differently, and it's a new form. There's a new addition to it, a new way of looking at it. And yeah, it's just an exciting time that you're in.
I agree. Yeah, I'm thrilled. I'm excited. I'm I want to something I was going to say earlier, I guess. I realize that when I feel like I'm about to be
Hmm.
defensive about something in response to somebody's feedback, it's like the thing I know I need to go learn, right? So the so if you share a song and somebody says, I think that you need to change this thing, and you're like, no, I did that on purpose. Like this is the thing that it's like, wait a minute, hold on, start over, Seth.
But I love that because I think I've
Like yeah,
experienced that where sometimes I know I can feel that wall that someone's trying to put up. Like, I don't want to change it. I don't know if it's because they're hurt
mhm.
or they feel like, oh, that's work that I may have to put into it. I just wanted to move on and just be told that I could pass to the next level. But I have to develop this more. And it's like, yeah, you might have to. But that's an interesting
Yeah.
takeaway. And I think there's lots of people are probably listening that are like, uh-oh. Like little moments of like, uh-oh. I think I had a moment like that.
Yep.
And that's okay. I think because we're human. That's just the nature of growth in itself.
Right. And also, all feedback isn't correct, right? So you have to
Mm-hmm.
understand that if you can't hear it because and you feel defensive, then it probably is carrying some truth that you're afraid of admitting. But if you can at least acknowledge that that is an option or that is a perception, and I've decided that that's not something I'm going to take as what advice is, good
Now,
also. But
if somebody's listening
it's
to
fun.
this and they're like, listen, I like the idea of writing. I like the idea of all of this. How do I start taking that first step? Because like you're painting this picture which sounds fun and I would love to do this, but I just can't.
Mm. Yeah, I mean the cliche of just start is too complex,
Yeah.
right? Because if just starting was that easy, you would have
Mm-hmm.
done it already. So break it down to a step that allows for you to build upon. So in other words, if writing a song is hard, then write three notes. Build a chorus. If building a chorus is too hard, try to make a chorus that only has three words that repeat.
Yeah.
Or, like if you don't know how to play guitar well enough to like comfortably
Mm-hmm.
just flow with whatever your musical ideas are, then pick two chords and go back and forth between them and find notes and realize that um, the win is getting to the next step, not having I mean, yes, having written a song eventually, but in order to get to that stage, you have to win. I have an analogy around Rubik's cubes for that because I learned how to solve Rubik's cubes because it's only 7 steps. And correct me if I'm or yeah,
I,
people will comment if that's
you could have
incorrect.
said
But
any
that
sense.
no, but the point the no,
Yeah.
but the point is that as I was learning, the goal was to learn step one, and
Yeah.
that was my win. Not solving the Rubik's cube; it was getting step one done, and over and over and over, and then go, okay, now get one and two done, and then wipe it clean, and then one and two, and then clean, and then obviously you get where that's going. It's like eventually I could solve a Rubik's cube, but I couldn't just sit down and solve a Rubik's
I think
cube.
the beautiful thing of what you're
'Cause-
describing right
yeah.
there is if somebody, let's say in the context of licensing, they write a song or two or three or four and doesn't get accepted by a library, or it's not the deal they wanted, or it's not getting the placement, they view that as wow, that's because you're viewing that as the last
Mm.
step. It's like, but can we take a look instead at these incremental things that you've gotten better at that you're totally missing? And if you're not aware of this now, your whole perception of this process is going to be colored and you're going to miss out on all these huge growth moments.
Yep. Yeah, and I think we talked about that as well. Like that, it's if you're defining a destination as where you're happy, you will be perpetually
Yeah.
unhappy because you're not going to be in that destination ever. So it's learning how to fall in love with the process that allows for us to find a version of happiness more often. Obviously, the happiness is a complex idea, but the benefit of showing up all the time and gaining one little
Mm-hmm.
step at a time is like it moves you forward. You're heading somewhere, but you, but you, but by taking a step forward, you've at least gotten that much closer with something else every time,
Mm.
little piece at a time. So,
Seth, this was awesome. Now, if people are like, where can I find your podcast? Where can I go? Where can they go?
it's Behind the Act on YouTube, Spotify, Apple.
We'll include a link
everywhere.
in our description. But
Yeah.
Seth, this was awesome. So glad that you could join me.
Thank you so much thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's Mike from Songwriting for Guitar. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And hey, don't leave. We got other cool videos you should check out too. Like some of these right here. Oh, that one right there. That's really good. You should click that. Right there. Just click it.